Good morning and welcome to today's administrative meeting of the Public Service Commission. Commissioner O'Donnell is away on business this morning. He's actually testifying at the U.S. Senate before the Environmental and Public Works Committee on the important topic of what we're doing with this country's nuclear waste. As you may know, nuclear waste is currently stored in 121 sites all over the country, including down at our Calvert Cliffs nuclear station, and it's an issue that Congress has yet to find a solution to, despite having our storage site in Nevada. So hopefully, like the House last year, which passed a bipartisan bill, the Senate will revise the Nuclear Policy Act. And Commissioner O'Donnell will be testifying this morning, actually at this very minute, before the Senate subcommittee. That said, we have an agenda before us today. Before I ask for approval of the minutes, I'm going to change a tradition of this commission by no longer requiring a second. According to Robert's rules, a second is not required for a small commission. But if any of my colleagues ever object to a motion, I would ask you to speak up and speak loudly. With that, is there a motion to approve the minutes from the April 24th meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I move we approve the minutes from the April 24 administrative meeting.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved. Madam Secretary.
Turning to the consent agenda, there are 4 items on the consent agenda. The first item is Network Billing Systems, LLC, filed on February 27, 2019, a notification of proposed name change. Item 2 is Transbeam, Inc., filed on March 18, 2019, a request to cancel its authority to provide facility-based and resold local exchange and inter-exchange telecommunication services in Maryland and cancel its tariffs. Item 3 is Metropolitan Telecommunications of Maryland, Inc., filed on April 3, 2019, revised tariff pages. The company proposes to increase business individual message and measured line rates, effective May 8, 2019. Item 4 is Sandpiper Energy, Inc., filed on April 16, 2019. Its negotiated contract executed with an effective date of April 10, 2019, with an effective date of May 1, 2019.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Seeing none, are there motions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 1, I move that we note the name change effective June 1st, 2019. For item number 2, I move we rescind the company's authority to provide facilities-based and resold local exchange and inter-exchange telecommunications services in Maryland and cancel the respective tariffs. For item number 3, I move we accept the tariff revisions for filing with an effective date of May 8, 2019. And for item number 4, I move we accept the negotiated contract for filing under rate schedule NCR, negotiated contract rate.
Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? The motions are approved.
Turning to the administrative agenda, item number 5 is Rushmore Energy, LLC, filed on February 14, 2019, an application for license to supply electricity or electric generation services in Maryland.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. James Greger on behalf of staff. Item 5 on the agenda concerns a request by Rushmore Energy, LLC, for authorization to operate as an electricity supplier. Section 7-507 of the Public Utilities article requires the business entity be licensed by the Commission in order to engage in business as an electricity supplier in the state of Maryland. The company must prove technical and managerial competence, financial integrity, and compliance with all applicable federal and regional requirements. Rushmore currently operates in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Illinois. There have been no complaints in Illinois and 1 formal complaint in Pennsylvania within the last 24 months. The company has a complaint ratio of 2.3% in Ohio. Staff has contacted Rushmore in regards to these complaints, and the company has provided a plan to mitigate possible customer dissatisfaction or confusion in Maryland. The company's management team has significant experience in the energy industry. Rushmore has supplied the necessary financial instrument to demonstrate financial integrity. It is a member of PJM, and the company's website is satisfactory. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland. Additionally, direct the company to provide marketing and training materials specific to its Maryland operations, 2. Commission staff and Office of People's Counsel 30 days prior to use of the materials in Maryland. Finally, staff recommends that the Commission direct the company to notify the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information upon which the Commission relied in granting this license.
Thank you, Mr. Greger. I noticed the complaint rate of 2.3%. That seems relatively high, but I noticed that in Ohio, at least, and perhaps Pennsylvania, there are both formal and informal complaint procedures. Can you explain the difference?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. By formal complaints, we mean a complaint that was e-filed with the Ohio Commission and given a docket number. By informal complaints, we mean customers that called in to the Commission's hotline with an issue or a complaint in regards to the company. So in the case of Ohio, none of those complaints that were called in through the hotline arose above the level of a phone call with the Commission.
And could you explain what these additional guidelines for Maryland that would be to mitigate any customer dissatisfaction?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the company provided an action plan with 5 general areas in which the company would make efforts to improve their operations within the state. Those 5 areas are agent training, ongoing monitoring, escalation and adaptation, compliance and support, and communications. So basically, the action plan involves streamlining its communication with its customer base in order to avoid these issues in regards to confusion, in regards to bills and contracts going forward.
Right. Very good. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move we grant the company a license to operate as an electricity supplier in Maryland for all customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. Direct the company to provide marketing and training materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff and Office of People's Counsel 30 days prior to use of the materials in Maryland, and direct the company to file notice with the Commission within 30 days of any changes to the information in the application.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion is approved. Thank you.
Item 6 is the Potomac Edison Company filed on March 25, 2019, electric PSC MD number 54 tariff in compliance with order number 89072, case number 9490.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. This is Potomac Edison Company's revised tariff pages for service rendered on or after March 22, 2019. The filing is a compliance filing that implements the rates the Commission set at the conclusion of Potomac Edison's recent rate case, case number 9490. In order number 89072, issued on March 22, 2019, the Commission authorized the company to increase its electric distribution rates by no more than $6.199 million. In that order, the Commission adopted staff's modifications to the jurisdictional cost of service study and the class cost of service study, as well as staff's 2-step revenue allocation methodology. The Commission also adopted a 40% first-step revenue allocation based on the authorized revenue increase. Staff has reviewed the company's proposed rate revisions and found that the rates comply with the Commission's order. Staff recommends that the Commission accept the revised tariff pages for filing for service rendered on or after March 22, 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Does Counsel for Potomac Edison have anything to add?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Jeffrey Trout, Counsel to Potomac Edison. No, the staff did its usual thorough analysis, and we concur with their conclusion.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Do Commissioners have questions? Thank you. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, for item number 6, I move we accept the tariff for number 54 for the filing effective for service rendered on or after March 22, 2019.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is Edward Crooks, filed on February 28, 2019, a request for approval to transfer ownership of Trimac Water Company, Inc.
Good morning again. This is a request for approval to transfer the ownership of Trimac Water Company Incorporated to Edward Crooks, filed on February 28, 2019. Trimac is currently owned by the residents of the Forest Park subdivision located in Waldorf, Maryland. The filing includes a draft tariff an agreement regarding the terms of transfer, a letter discussing the agreement of the owners of TriMac to the proposed transaction, a deed for the real property, as well as responses to questions staff has typically asked of Mr. Crooks regarding similar past transactions. The system is currently being operated and maintained by Water Services Incorporated, a company owned by Mr. Crooks, under an agreement with the owners. Water Services has been providing this service since 2008. Because TriMac currently does not sell or distribute water for gain, the system does not fall within the definition of a water company that would be a public service company requiring approval of the transaction under Public Utilities Sections 6-101 and 5-203, and prior Commission approval is therefore not required. In addition, Charles County does not grant franchises or otherwise require county approval for the operation of private water companies, and there is no franchise involved in TriMac Water Company's transaction for the Commission to exercise authority over. The Commission has recently approved 4 similar transactions involving the transfer of water companies in Charles County to Mr. Crooks, and TriMac will be the 13th water company owned by Mr. Crooks. Accordingly, Mr. Crooks is qualified to own and operate the company. He has proposed an interim rate of $50 per month per customer and has listed the expenses underlying this proposed rate. The rate is an interim rate pending completion of a consolidated rate proceeding for Mr. Crooks's water companies, although staff notes that the proceeding is currently on hold at Mr. Crooks's request. Staff recommends the Commission note the transfer of ownership of TriMac Water Company Incorporated to Edward Crooks and approve an interim rate of $50 per month per customer.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Is Mr. Crooks or any affected party present? Seeing none, do commissioners have questions regarding this request for transfer? Commissioner Richard.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand what is our authority here? What are we being asked? I know we're just noting the filing, but should we be digging into this any deeper, or is that really beyond the scope of what we should be doing at this point?
Well, as I did state, staff typically has asked a number of questions of Mr. Crooks to clarify what precisely is happening in the transactions. And in this case, he actually anticipated us on those questions, so he did answer them. Beyond that, the Commission's jurisdiction is over the rates of the company. The company was previously owned by the property owners, and therefore was not selling water for gain, so the Commission, it was not a public service company, and the Commission didn't have jurisdiction over it. But once it's owned by Mr. Crooks, it is going to be selling water for gain, at least nominally so. And at that point, the Commission does have jurisdiction over the company, and in particular over the company's rates.
Okay, great. Some of the things kind of raised some concern. In the buck sheet, it says the owners, the 45 owners, indicated a desire. So I didn't know if there was any we should be looking into as, like, is there something a little stronger than indicated desire, especially since it seemed the vote was very close, 23 out of the 45, and whether or not that was a proper forum. So, but it sounds like what you're saying is that really is way beyond what we should be looking at it.
It probably is. I mean, actually, the vote was 23 out of 24 people voting of the membership. Approved the transaction. So it was, even assuming that they didn't have a quorum, and that really kind of depends on how you read what they said in the letter and what their bylaws actually do say. They still had a majority of the membership that had approved the transaction. And beyond that, though, we probably shouldn't second guess the actions of the former board. At this point, I mean, they did own the company, and they had the right to do it, to dispose of it as they saw fit. But going forward, the company's under the Commission's jurisdiction. So, for example, if Mr. Crooks were to try and sell it to somebody else,
Okay.
that would require.
I had the unfortunate experience of being a condo board president, and I know that you could really drag things down, whether the procedures were followed correctly, and, again, noting that there was a light turnout, close vote, and whether, people had the opportunity. But what I'm hearing is that really is beyond our scope, so I'll end there.
Just one question. Do we know, is there any update on the status of the rate case with Mr. Crooks? And I know he asked for a delay.
Essentially, the nature of the request to keep that proceeding on hold is that Mr. Crooks has had some construction projects in progress,
Okay.
and when he completes those projects, he would be back in touch with us to ask us to proceed. He had already filed the request probably about a year and a half ago. It was some time ago, and we had begun looking into the companies, but it got held up in the middle.
Okay. So the $50 per month rate appears to be reasonable. Is it?
It appears to be reasonable relative to what he's charging for some of his other companies, and he did document the expenses that he put into calculating those rates, or at least he listed the expenses, and it does appear reasonable.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. With no further questions on this matter, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. For item number 7, I'd move that we note the transfer of ownership of TriMac Water Company Incorporated to Edward Crooks and approve an interim rate of $50 per month per customer.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Item 8, and the last item on the agenda, is Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development filed on March 19, 2019, a request for approval of amended price lists for measures offered under the Limited Income Energy Efficiency Program and Maryland Energy Efficiency Tune-Up Program.
Thank you. And do we have counsel for DHCD present? If you could please approach the podium on your right. Good morning, Mr. Dean.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Michael Dean on behalf of staff. Item 8 is a filing by the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development of its amended price list for measures offered under the Limited Income Energy Efficiency Program and Maryland Energy Efficiency Tune-Up Programs. Under Public Utilities Section 7-211H5, the energy efficiency programs under the Empower Maryland programs are to address low-income communities and low to moderate-income communities. By order number 88514, the Department of Housing and Community Development is the authorized provider of Empower Maryland limited income programs. The order authorized amendments to the price list for the limited income energy efficiency measures if first reviewed by the Limited Income Empower Work Group and submitted to the Commission for approval. The price list was developed through several work group meetings and includes new measures. As discussed in the comments, staff has reviewed the filing. The Office of People's Counsel also filed a letter, mail log number 224957, supporting approval of the amended price list. Staff recommends that the Commission approve the Department of Housing and Community Development's individual measure price list and not to exceed caps for the low-income energy efficiency program and the MEET programs.
Thank you. Would counsel for DHCD like to make an appearance?
Yes, Commissioners, Amy Grasso on behalf of the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Grasso. Do you have anything to add to staff counsel's presentation and recommendation?
No, we appreciate the recommendation, and we would just ask that you approve these small changes to the price lists.
Thank you. Now, I see that we have changes both to the low-income program and to the tune-up program. I went through the list. They appear reasonable. Although if I adjust my own refrigerator temperature, I probably would save $3. Do commissioners have questions of staff or Ms. Grasso?
No, I just wanted to just ask. I would like to think that we're mindful of the administrative burdens that we're placing on DHCD when we have these types of filings. You did go through a multi-work group process, and if I understand correctly, in that process, there was general agreement or unanimous agreement on this. Do you think that having to come back to the commission was a necessary step under those circumstances, or could we have maybe made it a little easier for DHCD in this case?
I think that the answer is probably that DHCD would appreciate a little bit less of the administrative burden, but Nicolette Tran is here and can probably provide you more
Okay,
detail.
yeah, I just note that you're both here today and not out serving, doing the functions of DHCD for the citizens of Maryland, so, and then you had to prepare the filing, and then you also had to bring in 17 copies. So anyway, I just need to comment on whether or not this maybe was an unnecessary administrative burden.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Nicolette Tran on behalf of DHCD. I'm the program manager for both of the programs that we're requesting the amendment for today. And yes, the administrative burden is certainly something that we could look into reducing going forward, although the input from the work group is helpful for such requests. I think that's to some extent also something that we're actively seeking ourselves, but we would appreciate a closer look at what is really required.
Okay, yeah, perhaps in times when there is unanimity in the work group process, perhaps we can, again, a thought I have, try to figure out how we
Sounds like a good idea.
could reduce the burden, so.
Yeah, I think that just occurred to me. If there was a way to have approval of the commission where if there's a unanimous agreement among the work group, it could just pass without having to do the filing and appear at the hearing. It also would be more efficient because there wouldn't be that 6-week delay while we waited for the commission's ruling.
Okay, great. And I would note that we're having the power hearings tomorrow, so most likely you'll be back again before the commission. So great. Thank you.
Do commissioners have additional questions? I noted in the staff's buck sheet that the department was able to complete almost 2,000 jobs in calendar year 2018, although it fell short of its forecasted energy savings targets. What is it doing to get closer to the targets in 2019 as a department?
I can't provide an answer today, but we're also addressing it in our presentation tomorrow, if you would like a quick preview today. So we are currently looking into a more measure-level analysis of the savings and how the measure applications have changed over the past. For some measures, we're running into barriers based on structures that were set in place in the past, specifically for HVAC systems. The installation of HVAC systems can yield very high savings, but that rate has gone down. That's a specific measure that we're looking into. Also with the work groups, by the way, if you're looking into the provided work group notes as attachments to this filing, there is some information on what discussion is currently going on with the work group to identify which measures can yield high savings but run into obstacles in installation in the field. So that's where we're at currently, to really look into those high-saving measures to get more of those out into the homes.
Thank you, Ms. Tran. I did find it helpful that you provided some of the work group notes to your filing, so we appreciate that, and I won't ask that same question 24 hours from now. So
It's already in the presentation. I think it's already printed. We'll just skip right over it, and actually there'll be some numbers for you in that one as well.
great. Thank you, Ms. Tran and Ms. Grasso. With that, is there a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move we approve DHCD's individual measure price list and not to exceed caps for the Limited Income Energy Efficiency Program and Maryland Energy Efficiency Tune-Up Programs.
Thank you. All in favor? The motion is approved. Thank you. See you tomorrow. Seeing no additional business before the commission, unless Mr. Albert, do you have business? Oh, no. No, you're just stretching your legs. This meeting is adjourned.